Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. Today I'm going to talk to you about whether or not narcissists are mentally ill. The short answer would be yes, narcissists are mentally ill. Their mind is disordered, their perception is inordinately affected by emotion and therefore flawed. However, saying someone is ill carries connotations that don't really fit narcissism. For example, if something is the result of an illness, it would typically be considered that something isn't the person's fault. If a person has diabetes and their sugar is low, you wouldn't blame them for behaving aggressively. They can't really help that. Once their sugar gets back on track, they are restored to their normal cognitive function. Narcissism is different. Though their initial disorder is not something they chose or can help, their behavior because of that disorder is something they choose and something they can help. Unlike a diabetic who has a physiological cause of this behavior, the cause of the narcissist behavior is emotional. More importantly, a narcissistic disorder does not preclude a narcissist from knowing what is right and what is wrong. They know perfectly well, and they know that their behavior is not considered okay by anybody else but them. They simply justify that behavior to themselves and to other people. This is why people who are diagnosed with narcissistic disorder still go to prison or get the death penalty, because they know the difference between right and wrong, but they choose not to conform their behavior to that standard. A person who truly cannot help themselves will act however, regardless of the situation. Narcissists by and large do not do that. They are often only out of control when it suits them, when they know they can get away with it. A narcissist can be raging, hysterical, and violent one minute, beating up their spouse and their children, then cool as a cucumber and lying to the police the next minute. Serial killers are a perfect example of that. Many serial killers had an absolutely abysmal, terrible childhood. Many were abused, neglected, sexually molested. Many murderers in general have had that experience. At trial, their families get on the stand and they talk about how horrible this person's life was and how much of a victim they are, but they still go to prison. Abusers of all kinds, same thing. All of these people are narcissistic in some form or another, and they still go to jail. Why? Because it's not an excuse. Just because you had a terrible childhood and you now don't care about the lives or feelings of other people doesn't make it okay to hurt them. The only excuse is when someone does not know the difference between right and wrong, and narcissists do. Now you contrast that with someone who has schizophrenia. This person believes that the clerk at 7-Eleven is broadcasting waves into their head that are causing their brain to rot, slowly killing them. This guy can literally feel his brain deteriorating. He repeatedly asks the clerk to leave him alone, resulting in multiple scenes where he assaults the clerk and attacks the police when they come because he believes the police are working with the clerk. He moves farther away from the store, believing that that's going to be an acceptable answer to the problem, but it still doesn't stop. The clerk is still broadcasting waves into his brain. Finally, believing his brain is almost totally deteriorated and that the clerk has now stolen his pulmonary artery, he goes over to the store and kills the clerk. Okay, this is not somebody that knows the difference between right and wrong. This is not somebody who is justifying behavior they know is not okay. This is someone who thinks they're defending themselves against a person who is literally trying to kill them. This is, therefore, someone who cannot be held responsible for their behavior. Now, I've gotten some questions from people wondering if the fact that narcissists are victims means we should feel sorry for them. I, of course, can't speak for anyone else, but I know I don't. I pity them, but that's not the same thing. Narcissists of all types are, in fact, mentally ill, yes, due to the fact that their thinking is disordered and their perception is distorted. But they are aware of what they're doing, and they know it's wrong. They just don't care because they believe they have the right to do whatever they want. Their justification usually is, you hurt my feelings. This one thing gives them the mental and moral freedom, in their opinion, to do whatever they want to someone without ever feeling bad about it at all. Only a narcissist would believe it's okay to kill somebody for hurting your feelings. Prisons are full of narcissists who have done exactly that. They know it's not acceptable to hurt others, but they don't care. Rules are for other people. The narcissist has reasons, and that's all they need. Their ego demands reparation, and it's all done on purpose because in the moment they feel justified. So, just so there is no confusion, narcissists are intentionally abusive and they are intentionally manipulative. The idea that a mental disorder precludes a person's ability to plan, to manipulate, or be abusive is incorrect. The idea that this disorder somehow renders them not responsible for their actions is also incorrect. The narcissist impairment is emotional for the most part. They're not delusional, although they can appear delusional to people who don't understand the full scope of narcissistic reasoning. The schizophrenic in our previous example is delusional. He believes he's under life-threatening psychic attack from a person who doesn't even know him. Narcissists, for the most part, are simply overreacting to perceived slights by so-called loved ones, reacting that way only when they can get away with it, and the only attack they fear is against their ego. They are not forced to react the way they do, as the schizophrenic man believes he was. They react that way out of rage and indignation. "I was mad" is not an acceptable excuse for anything when you've done something that you know is wrong. Narcissistic disorders do not prevent people from knowing the difference between right and wrong. They don't prevent people from conforming their behavior to these standards. They just prevent people from caring about it. In the end, though, it doesn't really matter. Regardless of whether someone has a mental disorder or not, this is not a reason for you to put up with abuse. If you were married to a schizophrenic, like the one in our previous example, who was trying to kill you in your sleep because they thought you were secretly working for the CIA and collecting information on them, you wouldn't stay in that relationship just because they have a mental illness. Dangerous is dangerous, regardless of the reason. Is it their fault they're acting like that? No, it's not. Should you stay in that situation? No, you should not. You should call the authorities and get your loved one some help. The difference here is that while your schizophrenic loved one can actually get help and get better, your narcissistic loved one generally cannot. There is no medication that can fix their distorted, emotionally afflicted perception or make them care about other people. There's nothing that can fix these things. You cannot save your narcissistic loved one. You can only prevent yourself from being destroyed. I hope this clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you and have a wonderful day.